Welcome to On-Site Insights, a series of podcasts by On-Site Ventures about deep tech and the people behind it. We invest in the next groundbreaking idea.
Welcome to the 5th episode of On-Site Insights. On-Site Insights is a series of LinkedIn audio events with the goal to bring our portfolio companies and the people behind these companies into the spotlight and give them a platform to present themselves. For this episode, we have Alex with us. Alex is the co-founder and CEO of Lidrotec, a startup building the future of semiconductor fabrication. Thank you for being with us today, Alex.
Yes, thank you for the invitation.
Typically on On-Site Insights, I want to get started on a more personal note. Can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your background before founding Lidrotec?
Of course. So my background is in economics and finance. That's what I studied in a bachelor and master. And after my master's, I worked in the financial industry for 5 years in asset management in London, Munich, and Frankfurt. And then about 6 years ago, I decided, together with my co-founder Alex, he basically introduced me to Lidrotec. I decided to get involved, and then eventually 5 years ago, I quit my job in finance and started Lidrotec.
What is the founding story behind Lidrotec?
Yeah, Alex, Tech Alex, one of my co-founders were came to me, or actually called me one day and has said, I need to tell you something. I said, okay, shoot. And he said, no, I need to tell you in private. And then he drove from Bochum, where we're based right now, where he was based, to Frankfurt. And then he told me something about lasers and femtoseconds and micrometers and nanoparticles. And he asked me what I think about it. And I said, I don't understand the tech, but who are the clients and what's the market? And then we started talking about it. And eventually I realized what the potential of the technology is for the semiconductor industry and actually other industries. And then I started working together with them to file the exist grant. And once we got the grant, I decided that it's time to leave the big ship of financial industry and join the small speedboat of Lidrotec.
Can you tell us a bit about the team? So how large is the team? Who are the front runners? You mentioned Alex already. So Tech Alex, how large is the team? Where is everyone based? And then what does everyone bring to the table?
We were 4 co-founders. We're still 4 co-founders. So it's Tech Alex, then Jan and Janis, who are also both tech founders. So the 3 of them studied during their PhD in laser application sciences at the Ruhr University Bochum. So that's where they met. I have known Alex for now over 20 years. We went to school together, and that's the connection how I got into the team. And by now we're 18 people, 18 on the payroll, and we have a few students constantly who do their master and bachelor thesis with us. So typically there are more than 20 people involved with Lidrotec right now at any point in time.
And how was it for you coming from a traditional finance field to break into a deep tech field and dealing with lasers and nanoparticles and all these sorts of things on a daily basis?
Yeah, if you look at my CV, it's quite funny. So you see finance, economics, then you see PIMCO, you see Goldman, and then you see academic researcher at the chair of laser application science in Bochum. So yeah, it was because we were employed through the university during the grant program. So yeah, it's quite funny, and it is definitely a change. So it's for sure a totally different kind to work, but also a totally different learning and growing experience when you're in a startup. And for me, basically since the start, every 6 to 12 months, I had a different job in the startup. So the first 6 months, you were basically a student and you try to learn as much as you can as a non-engineer about something that's close to rocket science. So that was definitely an interesting experience. Then you I was more of an accountant for the grant program, because obviously I cannot help in the lab. So I tried to help as much as I can on things that I could do. And then eventually you move on to be the fundraiser. Then you move on to be, the chief hiring person that starts hiring people and does all the HR. And then you actually become like the CEO, so where you manage 18 people. You talk about strategy. Of course, you are in touch with your investors on a regular basis. So it is definitely an incredible journey as a founder. You have to be willing to learn new things all the time and also to adapt and change your own job description. But to be honest, I would not want to go back to my previous life. So I have never regretted the decision for a single second.
With all these different roles that you take at the team growing, what is your philosophy of leading a company, leading a team, and eventually growing it?
Very good question, and I think it's something that you don't really know from the start. So it sort of also evolves over time, maybe it will even change. Lots of people say that it's different to be in a company with 5 people, and it's different to be in a company with 20, and then with 50 or 100, and then with 1,000. So, and sometimes it even needs different people in the C team for the different stages. At least that's what people who've gone through it tell you. So basically, either you have to change constantly over time and evolve and adapt to the situation, or eventually, you have to find the right people to do it with you. So basically, to make this introduction to get to the point. So I think right now, my current philosophy is with 18 people, you have to have 2 things to be successful. And it's first, you have to have a whatever it takes attitude. Because in the end, every person here in the company is basically at the same time very high up in the hierarchy and also very low in the hierarchy. Because most of the time, you have to do everything in your field. If you're in finance, you have to pay the bills, but you also have to do the fundraising. So it's a very interesting situation. So you need this whatever it takes attitude. You cannot be the one who says, I don't want to do this because this is below me. And then secondly, you also need a get things done mentality. So you just have to do things and make progress. And I think these 2 are right now very important. And I guess it will also always stay important, but who knows, maybe in 2 years, I'll say 2 different things or 3 different things. But for sure, right now, these are the 2 most important things for me if I look for people in our company.
OnSite also invested, of course, in Lidrotec alongside lead investor Goose Capital, based in the US. And on Goose sides, the investment was led by Ashok Rao. Ashok is a true veteran in the industry, has taken the company public, and is very experienced. How do you work together with him, and how do his experiences contribute to Lidrotec?
Ashok was an incredible asset for our company and still is. So he was basically the first one to quickly make a move and say, I want to be part of this as an investor, and gave us a term sheet very early because he believed in the technology, and he's been helping us since because of what you said. So because he's a veteran, so he brought a company public in the 90s. I think he was the first Indian American to do so, and brought a company to NASDAQ. And he grew it himself from a very early stage on. So basically right now we benefit a lot from his experience, because every challenge we have or I face, I can just call him and he'll have an advice on it. And then he helps me with the challenge. So it's very, very helpful. Of course, he has also a great network, and he always stands on the side of the founders, although he's basically an investor, but because of his experience, it's never investor versus founders. He's always on our side, and that's great. And I couldn't have wished for a better member on the board as from our investor than Ashok.
Shifting gears a little bit, could you actually explain what Lidrotec does? What is unique about your product, your technology?
We are building machines for the semiconductor industry, and the machine that we build is meant to cut microchips. So microchips are produced on pizza-sized plates called wafers, and on an 8-inch diameter wafer, you can easily fit up to 200,000-300,000 chips. And one of the last process steps before these chips can be used in any digital products is the so-called dicing process, so where you cut out each chip from this plate. And what we do with our technology, we can cut out every single chip without damaging it. That's one of the problems that the current technologies have. They damage up to 10% of the chips in this final process step. which is incredibly painful because all the costs and all the time have already gone into this chip. And the way we do this is we have a new technology that uses a laser. That's not new, but we also use a liquid flow that flows over this plate while the laser goes through the flow and then cuts out the chips underneath that flow. And with that flow, we have a cooling, we have a rinsing effect, and in the end, you can cut faster, you can cut with higher quality, you can cut thinner, and that means that semiconductor companies have a higher productivity with our technology. So in the end, they can produce more chips in the same time or even save costs per chip. So in the end, it's very beneficial for the semiconductor companies in this world. And 2 years ago, maybe some people will remember that there was a semiconductor shortage. And that's a very hands-on example where we could have reduced that shortage with our technology, because every wafer that was produced basically threw away up to 10% of the chips. And with our technology, you would have had up to 10% more chips on the market. So some of this shortage would have been reduced. So yeah, there is a lot of potential in this technology, and we're now targeting to become a key player in the dicing industry.
Of course, the development processes are notoriously complex. So how far along are you along this process? Are you working with customers? When are you on market?
Yeah, you're totally right. So I think if you think about hardware and then you think about semiconductor industry, you couldn't find a more difficult combination to get market entry, because it's a very, very, on the one hand, technologically innovative industry, but on the production side also somewhat conservative, and of course very focused on reliability. So I think within the past 5 years, we've already done very, very big steps, to be fair, and now we're close to having our first pilot machine with a customer. That's the goal for the next couple of months. So then we'll have an evaluation pilot that will be used in an industry environment, which is great. And the goal is to then sell the machine next year in 2025 to a semiconductor company and make the first revenues through machine sales. And that's what we're working on. So yeah, very difficult, but we're on it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, if we repeat this podcast in a year, I can say that we've succeeded in selling a machine.
Definitely fingers crossed. Alex, you are quite a bit in the US. You have a legal entity there. Of course, Lead Investor Goose Capital is in the US. How does your presence in the US help you?
Yeah, it's true. So we have the investments go through our US entity. So the everything in terms of board meetings is based on the US style, and that's why I'm in the US so much. And I think it's really, I mean, the semiconductor industry is a global industry, but the US for sure is a little further along than Europe, for example. I mean, all the regions are trying to improve their position right now with all these CHIPS Act, etc. But I think being in the US helps to just be internationally more prepared for internationalization. So I think investors particularly are more familiar with investing in US companies than in German GmbH companies. And we've already seen it 2 years ago with our last financial round. It was easier to get the funding we needed in the US than it was here in Germany or in Europe. That's also because the ecosystem of investors in the US is just much more involved, much bigger. I mean, you think of Silicon Valley and you try to find something similar in Germany, and it's in early stages. So, I mean, I think we have Silicon Saxony here that's kind of moving towards that, but of course it's not the size of Silicon Valley. So in the end, for investors, I think it's a big benefit. And of course, also once we want to do the market entry in the US, which is also planned for the next 2 years, then having a US entity will help, because I guess the Americans will like to buy machines from a US company more than from a German company. And it also helps with, import-export stuff as well. So being prepared for this internationalization was also one of the reasons.
You touched upon this a bit before. Of course, tech sovereignty is a central theme in the semiconductor industry. Europe, the US, China, they all have launched CHIPS Act and acts and are investing massively. How well do you see Europe being positioned, and can Europe actually win against the US and China?
Yeah, I think no one knows that. If you knew, then if you know somebody who knows, then let me know and I'll invest in what this person says. But I think it's maybe it's also in different sections. So what we see in Europe, a lot of investments go towards silicon carbide. So this is one of the semiconductor materials, and it's the material that is used for power semiconductors that are, for example, used in electric vehicles. So that's kind of the focus in Europe, and that's also where I think Europe is leading right now. So to use your words, maybe Europe is winning there. On the other hand, in the US, you see a lot of focus on what's called advanced packaging. So that's also a trend where you try to continue Moore's law, not by putting more transistors on the same amount of space, but you basically start stacking chips on top of each other in a 3D structure, sort of. And then you can also double the amount of chips on the same surface, but of course in a bigger volume. So that's where the US is focused on. And you don't really see that as much here in Europe. So maybe everyone can win, but just in different segments of the market. But I think in general, of course, for us, it's great. The more investments flow into semiconductor industry, the better.
Agreed. It is definitely an interesting time in the semiconductor industry. As you mentioned, Moore's law has remained valid for 60-ish years. Now it seems that it's at least somewhat coming to an end. Of course, people are creative, as you said, stacking chips, for example, advanced packaging. And of course, we see a massive AI boom right now. How do you see the overall industry evolving? What trends are you excited about the most?
Yeah, so for us right now, we target the silicon carbide markets first. That's one reason, of course, because it's regionally here in Europe is the focus on, but more so because our technology has the biggest advantages right now in this particular field today. In 2 years, we wanna be competing on the whole market, but for now it's silicon carbide. So if you ask me from personal interest, I would love to see more electric vehicles on the market, because that will push the silicon carbide market and that will be beneficial for us in the next 2 years. But generally, if you want to dream, I would love to one day be in a flying car, So there are lots of trends that the semiconductor industry is pushing right now, and it's an interesting time to be around right now, I think. So lots of good things should be coming in the digital world going forward.
Again, shifting gears a bit, Alex, you're currently fundraising. Can you share some information on the fundraise?
Yeah, we're raising our next round, and it's going to be around a round of around 7 million. The goal is to get this market proof to sell machines within the next 2 years. From a tech perspective, I think we're pretty much de-risked now. So we have a machine running in our lab since July last year. So for almost a year now, we will be delivering a pilot machine to a customer. So we're about halfway through with the funding. So we're still looking for about 3.5 million. So happy to engage with investors that don't know us already. But yeah, it's my goal until the end of the year to complete this round and then be ready for the next growth phase.
All the best of success for the fundraise.
Thank you.
Maybe also looking back on your last fundraise, how was your experience? What learning did you take away for this current fundraise then?
Yeah, very good question. I think fundraising is a very interesting thing, for lack of a better word. And if you've never done it before, you for sure will make some I don't want to say mistakes, but you'll do some things that you wanna do differently. One thing, for example, that we did last time was that we let a lot of investors speak to our customers very early on, basically almost after the first call, because that's what they requested. And if you're not experienced in fundraising, you think that whatever the investors say is what you have to do. But basically, we got the feedback from our customers in the end after the round that we let too many investors speak to them because it was basically too much time for them. So what we do now is, and actually has very good feedback from our investors or the ones that we speak to now, we gather questions from all investors, and then we're going to do a recorded call with a customer that we can share with all the investors. So basically the customer only has to speak to us once instead of, let's say, 10 or 20, and then the investors will still have the same informational benefit. So that's one thing. I think you'll have to learn that sometimes you can push back a little, but of course, you have to keep in mind that the investors, of course, want to de-risk or de-risk the investment as much as they can. And speaking to customers for sure is one way to do it. So if you can push back with a good alternative, and that's a good learning. But I guess 2 years ago I wouldn't have dared to do that, and we dare now, and it works. So yeah, just be courageous to offer an alternative solution, because the customers, of course, are also very important, and you don't want to annoy them, because in the end, and that's, I think the investors understand that too, the customers are the most important stakeholder for a startup.
Apart from the fundraise, what is up next? What specific topics and projects are you currently working on?
Always too many for the amount of people we have. So that's also one thing you have to learn as a startup. You need to focus and start to say no to things. But we have, of course, this delivery to Trump Photonic Components. So the first pilot machine, that's one of the key things for the next couple of months. And then probably after that, making sure that the machine works over there. So it's going to probably keep us busy for the rest of the year. This project then in the lab, of course, we want to improve the cutting speed even more, because the faster we can cut, the more benefits we offer to our customers. And then once the fundraising is complete, we're going to move to hiring new people. So one of the key goals for me is to get more credibility into our company. And one way to do this is to hire personnel with semiconductor experience that our customers and partners trust. Because in the end, people trust people. So if we can find good people that have already done, some things in the semiconductor industry, then they'll help us to achieve our goals. So that's then the next project.
Thank you so much, Alex. This actually concludes our event. Thank you for joining, and see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
That was On-Site Insights, a series of podcasts by On-Site Ventures about deep tech and the people behind it. For more information on our portfolio companies and investment strategies, visit our website, onsite.vc, and follow us on LinkedIn at On-Site Ventures.